Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. Whether you're new to the channel or a regular viewer, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'd like to talk a little bit today about 1960, the year that Elvis returns from his national service back onto a world stage, and it's such a frenetic year of activity. I mean, it's just like boom, 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 boom. So March the 3rd, Elvis returns to American soil. On March the 5th, he's officially discharged from duty. Now he travels to Memphis, and on March the 7th, he arrives back in Memphis, and that very same evening, a press conference is held in Vernon's office in Graceland, and Elvis talks to the media. Now, there are, to my mind, three real key stages, events, if you like, in 1960. You've got the sort of reintroduction to the public of the all-new Elvis, if you like, on the Frank Sinatra Timex show. Then you've got the recording sessions for what ought to be Elvis's comeback album from the Army, Elvis Is Back. And then you've got the first major motion picture since he went into the Army, GI Blues. And again, this introduces a very different Elvis to the world. If you put King Creole and GI Blues back to back, you've got two very different Elvises presented to the world there, I would say. So let's look at some timelines then. So we've got March the 7th, Elvis gives the press conference at Graceland. Now, RCA want to get him back into the studio as quickly as possible because they want new product to put out. Now, interestingly, he goes into the studio on March the 20th into March the 21st and records 6 masters. One of those will be selected and pulled out as the new single. But the single, as it turns out, Stuck on You, is an interesting anomaly, if you like. It was the first time this had happened. Now, I'm gonna read this directly from the rather brilliant Elvis History blog website, because I think it's worth sort of highlighting what the situation with Stuck on You was. In its March the 7th, 1960 issue, Billboard reported the following. RCA Victor has devised a most elaborate piece of distributive machinery for handling what is expected to be a smash hit, but the record hasn't been recorded yet. Moreover, there is reason to believe that the song hasn't even been chosen. The disc in question is the first by Elvis Presley since his return to the United States. So, RCA decide that a new single is going to be released, but that single hasn't been recorded, but they already start the publicity machine in progress. Billboard also reported that RCA predicted the unnamed, unrecorded Presley single would sell about 2 million copies. But the company conservatively decided on an initial pressing of 1 million copies. 1 million copies, instant gold record status, a phantom record to be manufactured and distributed to a public expected to buy it no matter what it sounded like. In 1960, such a circumstance in the recording industry was unheard of. Up until then, when record companies released single discs, even by the most popular artists, success depended on 2 factors. First, getting radio stations to play the single on air, and second, hoping the tune caught on with the public. With Elvis's first single release of 1960, RCA simply assumed both would happen and prepared to manufacture 1 million copies. So what you'll see is with the sleeve of Stuck on You, that was produced with no reference to what the song was actually called. So you can see there that it says Elvis's first new recording for his 550 million fans all over the world. But it doesn't say what it is. So, you know, they've got the shots of him, they've got the artwork, but yeah, we need that track. So, as I said, March 20th over into the 21st, he goes in and records 6 masters, and one of those is Stuck on You. Now, Stuck on You is released March the 23rd. So that's pretty rapid going. March the 20th to the 21st, he records it, and it's out and released on March 23rd. That's pulling out some stops there. You know, they were really keen to get that single out there. And, you know, they were proved right. It was a smash hit. So, right. So, March 23rd, Stuck on You comes out. March the 26th, Elvis goes and records into Miami in Florida. He goes to record the Frank Sinatra Timex TV special. Now, that in itself is an interesting indication of the Colonel's machine for presenting the new Elvis Presley to the world, because Sinatra was very much, by that stage, part of the establishment. Okay, when he started out, you know, he was a teen idol himself, but by 1960, he was very much an established artist with his own TV show, what have you. Now, Sinatra had been very disparaging about rock and roll, and there was some disagreement really about whether he was disparaging about Elvis himself or just generically. And actually, I've got a quote here from the same rather wonderful website, the Elvis History blog, and that argues that the quote that Sinatra gave was ambiguous. It wasn't directed at Elvis specifically, but I think you can kind of get what he was getting at. So this was an interview, an article in the October 28th, 1957 edition of the Los Angeles Mirror News. So 57, Sinatra says, "My only deep sorrow is the unrelenting insistence of recording and motion picture companies upon purveying the most brutal, ugly, degenerate, vicious form of expression. It has been my displeasure to hear. Naturally, I refer to the bulk of rock and roll." So he's saying he's referring to the bulk of it. He's not saying he's referring to all of it. But of course, who's the figurehead of rock and roll? Yeah. "It fosters almost totally negative and destructive reactions by young people. It smells phony and false. It is sung, played and written, for the most part, again, by cretinous goons and by means of its almost imbecilic reiterations and sly, lewd, in plain fact dirty lyrics. And as I said before, it manages to be the martial music of every sideburn delinquent on the face of the earth." Pretty strong stuff. "This rancid smelling aphrodisiac I deplore. But in spite of it, the contribution of American music to the world could be said to have one of the healthiest effects of all our contributions." So he throws in a little, you know, this is terrible, but yeah, and at least we're contributing to the world by giving them music. Yeah, but he clearly had a bee in his bonnet about rock and roll. But you know, that's a generational thing, isn't it? You know, every performer that sees something new come along that kind of takes away the shine of their popularity is going to be kind of, if not antagonistic towards it, certainly suspicious of it. I mean, look at Elvis when the Beatles arrived and the British beat boom and everything. You know, he was very suspicious of what that meant for him and his career. And so on and so on. You know, you'll see that repeated throughout the history of popular music. So Sinatra's reaction is understandable, but clearly, although he's not naming Elvis specifically, as I said, Elvis is the figurehead of rock and roll, you know, sideburn delinquents and all this sort of reference. He hedges his bets by not being specific and saying, oh, it's only the bulk of it and some, but it feels to me like if he's not having a go directly at Elvis, Elvis is informing those comments he makes. So when you get in 1960 and he's inviting him on to, you know, to Welcome Home television special, real turnaround there, real change in perception. But right, so you get the taping of the Sinatra special on March 26th, but it doesn't air until, I don't think we're somewhere into May the 12th, 1960. So after the taping of that, Elvis is back in the studio April the 3rd to the 4th, and he delivers 12 masters. And I think, you've got 18 masters delivered on the 20th to the 22nd and the 3rd to the 4th. So really only 4 days, and these would be overnight into the next day, as Elvis's habit was to recording. So that's some production rate, and it feels to me that Elvis's huge bursts of creativity, the ones that come at pivotal moments in his career, are often driven by periods prior to that where he's had chance to sort of contemplate what he's going to do, and then he kind of unleashes it in this burst of creativity. Look at the Sun recordings. Once he finds his feet there, he's off and running, and it's almost like everything he'd have had in his head and his sort of everything he'd been dreaming of sort of gets unleashed in those recordings once he finds his feet with That's All Right Mama. When he gets into the RCA contract and he gets into RCA's big studios, he's probably dreamed of being in those big studios, and he unleashes this incredible period of creativity then. And it's the same in 1960. He's had 2 years away from the public eye, and in those 2 years he's practiced constantly. He's honed that voice and turned it into this brilliant instrument that could bend to his will and do what he wanted it to. Things that he couldn't have done with that voice beforehand, but he's worked in all his spare time, in his downtime. He's been rehearsing, practicing. You've got all those home recordings that evidence that during his time in the army and during his time in Germany. But it's like he's created this incredible instrument that is so much more flexible than it was before. And it was a great instrument before, but it's even better now. And he unleashes that. He's ready for those sessions. And in just 2 days into, day, over that period, 18 masters and the most phenomenal tracks, just awesome. And we'll talk a little bit about Elvis Is Back in a minute. And I think really that's the last time we see a burst of creativity quite like that until 1969 in the American sound studios. But then that's exactly the same thing. You've got another period of Elvis planning in his head, frustrated at where he was and looking forward what he's going to do when he unleashes it. And when he unleashes it, it's mind-blowing. And you get these real sort of significant milestones of those recordings, I think, and Elvis Is Back is certainly one of them. But because Elvis Is Back, now this is the other thing, talk about rush release. Elvis Is Back was released on April the 6th. Now those final 12 masters were only delivered overnight, 3rd into the 4th. So again, 2 days between, exactly the same that happened with the single Stuck on You. As soon as they're in the bag, the machine goes into overdrive, puts that product out there. It's quite a phenomenal achievement. So let's have a little look at because it was recorded first, let's have a little look at the Sinatra Timex special and a couple of little bits and pieces I've got. Now, this is the CD release that came out 2 years ago on the Memphis Recording Service label. And this is Elvis's performances on the Sinatra special, Welcome Home Elvis. And this is, now, I'm about to say this is phenomenal audio quality. Now, it doesn't take a lot of observation to notice that this is still sealed. Now, I know this is phenomenal audio quality for 2 reasons. One, the Memphis Recording Service really never failed to deliver. And 2, I've heard from enough people that have heard this that tell me that it's brilliant. Now, why is it still sealed? Well, I'm a bit funny where it comes to historical recordings. I like to have them, and this is for sure a historical recording, but I don't necessarily always consider them the greatest listening experiences. Now I've seen the Sinatra show enough times, and I know exactly what they sound like. Elvis gives a devastating performance. He is the epitome of cool. He just delivers. But to me, this isn't something that I'm going to pull out and have a listen to for listening pleasure. Not that it's displeasurable, but hopefully you get what I mean. It's a landmark thing to have, but it's not a go-to that I'm going to put on. So hence the reason it's still sealed. Now, Welcome Home, Elvis. This is your FTD book from 2012. The Usual Safe Hands are... No, actually, I was going to say this is David English and Paul Granlund, but it's David English on his own, this one, which is interesting. An audio-visual documentary by David English, but on the bottom it says copyright 2012 Paul Granlund. So he has had an involvement in it, but not in the actual writing of this one. But nevertheless, David English, a super safe pair of hands. This is a fantastic record of that monumental TV show. And a really nice touch there where you get a replica of how the GI shots were presented in the Elvis Is Back album. But these are, I believe, some of the different photographs, I think. Now, FTD, you get yourself a CD, and the CD you get yourself is the Elvis Is Back album. So that's interesting, really, because maybe, I don't know if it was a rights issue at the time with 2012, but you'd think they'd have gone with the Sinatra Timex show and put that in it as well. That's what the book is about, but they didn't. They went with Elvis Is Back, so that may well have been a rights issue at the time. So we start off March the 3rd, Elvis arriving on US soil. And then I think we go into March the 5th and Elvis and his official discharge. I believe this was at Fort Dix. Yeah, Fort Dix, New Jersey. Elvis is officially discharged from the US Army. March the 6th, departure from Washington to Memphis. He goes on the train. And then when he arrives back in Memphis, he gives that press conference at Graceland. Now, if you've been watching the last few episodes I've done, you know I like to bang on about Elvis's hair. And it's worth a mention here because he appears from back into the public eye with the biggest pompadour he's ever had in his life. When you see him on the Sinatra show, it's absolutely huge. I mean, he looks fantastic. Don't get me wrong, he looks brilliant. But I always found that strange, you know, that it's the new clean-cut Elvis, and yet he's got the biggest quiff that he's ever had. It really is quite a work of art. All it needs is the sideburns, but yeah. So there we go. March the 7th, back at Graceland, press conference on the lawns of Graceland with a cake, Welcome Home Elvis cake, and then looking cool as you like in Vernon's office. FTD, goes without saying, just phenomenal quality books. Tons of really, really great writing and lots of nice information. So, Elvis is off to Miami. Elvis is going to Miami for TV show filming. That's from the Memphis Press Scimitar, March the 15th, 1960. You can kind of see Elvis's hair at this stage, where the British singer Morrissey got his inspiration for his hair from, because it's a very high pompadour indeed. So we've got some details there of the tracks that were recorded March 20th to 21st. So we get Stuck on You, Soldier Boy. So this is in Studio B. We get Make Me Know It, Soldier Boy, Stuck on You, Fame and Fortune, A Mess of Blues, and It Feels So Right. Absolute classics, every one of them. So then Nashville to Miami, March 21st. A lot of travelling on trains. Arrival in Miami. And it makes me chuckle, these shots of Elvis as he's arriving in Miami, because he's taken to wearing that little fedora, which is, you know, very reminiscent of Sinatra's. It's almost like he's taking on Sinatra in a funny sort of way. I mean, I'm sure maybe he didn't think of that in that way at all, but you know, that was the classic, you know, Sinatra and the Nelson Riddle era, and you know, that look with the fedora and what have you. So, and of course Elvis would do that later as well when he records My Way, which was very much Sinatra's song, and it's almost like, yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think, but it seems to me like that there was subconsciously maybe some attempt to take him on at his own game. But yeah, look at that high hair. It's huge. Very, very cool. So yeah, you go. See, funnily enough, then we were rehearsing on March the 24th at the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami Beach. Sinatra's got a baseball cap, and Elvis is the one out Sinatra in Sinatra. Yeah. It's almost like, you know, there is the real passing of the mantle right there. Glorious book, absolutely glorious. Pretty hard to get hold of these days. You know, I almost wonder if I should just put like a disclaimer at the bottom when I'm talking about books like these FTD ones, and it's just a given that they're hard to get hold of, because unfortunately that's just how it is. But lots of fantastic photographs from the recording of the special. Just beautiful photography. Marvellous stuff, absolutely marvellous. Where are we here? Backstage with fans. Okay. Fans lucky enough to meet Elvis on the set of the TV special. So there we are at the beginning of the special with the whole cast, and Elvis in his GI uniform. There we go. That's the Love Me Tender Witchcraft sequence, where again, I think most people will agree, maybe not Sinatra diehards, but Elvis managed to significantly out-call Sinatra and make him look a bit outdated and fuddy-duddy, in my opinion. So then we get... okay, then we're in the recording. Yeah, now we're back into the recording studios in April, and we get a track-by-track list of all the sides cut there. And then we kind of finish, the book finishes with an examination of the Elvis Is Back album and the events surrounding its release and publicity and what have you. So beautiful, beautiful book. 100% recommended. If you don't have it in your collection, you get the opportunity. You will not go wrong with this Follow That Dream. Welcome Home, Elvis. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Elvis Is Back. Such a landmark album. Quite a varied album. You get some rock and roll, but it's, you know, things like Make Me Know It, Dirty Dirty Feeling. It's a different kind of feel to rock and roll than Elvis had in the 50s, but I'd say it's still rock and roll. But then he messes around with things like Fever, Such a Night, and brings a different groove that we hadn't heard before. And then he messes with the blues, Reconsider Baby, Like a Baby. It's such a great album. It can't be overstated. And I think it's one of those that maybe the general public at large don't know as well. But it's just phenomenal. This idea that people over the years, throughout the decades, have poo-pooed, oh, Elvis, he died when he... Didn't Lennon say something stupid like Elvis died in 1959 when he went in the army? Well, that was when he went in the army, but when he went in the army. What a ridiculous thing to say. Listen to Elvis Is Back. That's not a guy at the top of his game, isn't it? It's all gone. I don't think so. Elvis Is Back is a phenomenal listen. And it stands up today as one of the, not only one of the landmark albums of Elvis's career, but one of the landmark albums of all time. It is literally, it's got an exuberance, it's got a professionalism and a musicality about it. I can't find enough superlatives, and I'm sure most of you watching this will agree. Elvis Is Back is a work of art, no question. I've got a few vinyl versions of it, not many. I've shown this multiple times. I'm sure everyone that's watched my videos is bored seeing it. This is the closest to the original I've got, and it isn't original because this is a early 70s pressing, but it's a nice sleeve on this one. So that's the closest I've got to anything contemporary, and it's still 10 years out of when it was originally released. I have this, and I showed this actually in my Army episode. This is the wax time pressing of Elvis Is Back with a gatefold, with the GI snaps that came with the original, but with a different back. And then I've got this is one of these public domain pressings, but they've made a bit of a hash of the cover, really. Look, if you look at the original and where Elvis's head came, they've sort of squashed him up to the top to fit the tracks there. Yeah, they've made a bit of a hash of that, I think. Not as much of a hash as one of the other public domain releases that I'll show you there. That, you know, my old bugbear again. They've used a Jailhouse Rock shot for Elvis Is Back. Not a fan, but anyway, that's your doll press of Elvis Is Back. There's your rear cover, and this is on quite nice blue vinyl. And the only other press on vinyl I have, and again I showed this on my Army episode, is the Memphis Mansion Soldier Boy. So there's my vinyl. Not a great volume, but you know, I've got enough representations that'll do me. Now, CD. A really nice way to own Elvis Is Back is the Legacy version. Unfortunately, when I sort of re-established my collection again, I picked up all the Legacy recordings, but I haven't been able to track down a nice condition copy of the Digipack version, because I think the Legacies really lend themselves to the Digipacks of these. I think they're really nicely presented, but I've only been able to get this jewel case version, which is slightly disappointing, but hey ho. So you get your original Elvis Is Back album, and you get singles: Stuck on You, Fame and Fortune, It's Now or Never, A Mess of Blues, Are You Lonesome Tonight, I Gotta Know, and Surrender. And then you also get on the second disc the album that would follow, Something for Everybody, and you get that and some singles as well. So it is a nice package. It's, you know, it's as good as all the double disc legacy releases are really good. But yeah, I would like the digipack. I'd like to find a nice copy of that sometime. So we'll only look at the Elvis Is Back stuff. Phenomenally cool photograph. Background. And Sinatra show. More Sinatra show. That was Elvis's show in Memphis, if I remember rightly. So, yeah, legacy recordings, always great value, always pretty decent sound, always well worth picking up. Now, your ultimate Elvis Is Back is, of course, the FTD sessions. This is just brilliant. Anything you could possibly want from the Elvis Is Back sessions. I think when that came out, one of the discs was dodgy, so that's the replacement disc. But just the presentation, just the way these are put together, absolutely stunning. Inside, as ever, bit of tape box, and then your CDs that precariously sometimes sit and drop out of these little trays, and your usual top quality booklet. I mean, just look at the amount of music you get. Just look at it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Not for everyone's taste. I wouldn't say, for instance, my wife is a particular fan of me playing something through to take 18 or whatever. I think usually after about take 2 or 3 she's had enough. But, you know, for us fans, we can't get enough, can we? Let's face it. So, yeah, beautiful booklet. Beautiful record of landmark, phenomenal recording sessions. And this is your ultimate listen. Huge fan of the sessions. They really are. You know, if I think back to when I first collected in the 70s and early 80s, the idea that I could have sat and listened to entire sessions of Elvis, working his way through arrangements, working his way through the structure of the songs, working on his phrasing, just would have blown my little mind. And I think we're so lucky to be treated to this material. So Elvis Is Back. I'm just going to finish with a little bootleg that for me is one of my favourite bootlegs of all time, actually. So this is on the Victrola label, and this is Elvis Is Back, the special edition. Now what this does, this gives you the original album, it gives you the singles, but then the second disc is called Beyond the Album, and what it does, it gives you versions of the songs from those sessions that Elvis performed at different times through his career. Some of them earlier, so for instance Reconsider Baby predates by 4 years the Elvis Is Back sessions, because it was sung at the $1 Million Quartet sessions on December the 4th, 1956. Then you've got some of the tracks that are performed while Elvis is away in the army, his private home recordings, Soldier Boy, etc. But then it goes through and it shows you that him digging back into some of those tracks, either in 1969, 70, or even through to the later 70s as he performed them live. So it's a really intelligent and well put together little package, this. I'd highly recommend it. It is quite tricky to get your hands on, but well worth it. I really like the approach they've taken with this, and it's beautifully put together. Rather cheeky, sneaky RCA Victor label on the cover there, and of course it's nothing to do with RCA Victor, but then Victrola was a related name as well. So there's your bits and pieces underneath the trays, and we get ourselves a nice little booklet, the Army snapshots, some text assessing and reassessing the album. Some really nice little article in there, actually. Just a really nice little package. You know, and you get Fever as late as, well, you get It's Now 11, 1977, Reconsider Baby 76, Fever 75, Fever 77, Such a Night 76, Are You Lonesome Tonight 75, Fever 72, Fever 72 again, Such a Night 1970, It's Now or Never 70, Reconsider Baby 69. So, you know, you get Elvis performing them throughout his career and going back to those tracks from the seminal album. So this is a beautiful little release, and I'm really pleased to have this one in the collection. And if you do see it, if it pops up, I would highly recommend it, because it gives you a different perspective on the Elvis Is Back album by having that beyond the album disc, which I think is a really clever little device. Highly recommend Elvis Is Back Special Edition on Victrola. So 1960, what else haven't we talked about in 1960, just to finish off? Right, what else happens? Well, you got GI Blues being filmed. We're going to talk about GI Blues next time. You've got Flaming Star being filmed. You've got His Hand in Mine album being recorded, along with the Surrender single. And you've got, towards right at the end of the year, you've got Wild in the Country beginning to be filmed. Other significant events that happen in 1960, on July the 21st, Elvis is awarded his first degree black belt in karate. Now, of course, this is a passion and a love that would follow him throughout the rest of his life. And his interest in the martial arts was something that he picked up in the forces. And the other significant thing that happens also in July, on July the 3rd, 1960, is Elvis's father Vernon marries Dee Stanley, who he'd met previously while Elvis was in the army. Now, I'd say that was a significant event, but one that Elvis obviously can't have been very happy about, and by all accounts he wasn't. You know, that he was devoted to his mother and felt the loss of his mother entirely, and I think to him he thought that Vernon had replaced her rather quickly, but you know, that must have been something that must have been hard for him to take. But yeah, 1960, what a huge landmark, not only in Elvis returning from the army, but just in this flurry of activity, this wonderful music they were presented with, this seminal appearance on television. And as I said, the first post-army film is made and released, and that's what I'm going to get onto next time. Next time we're going to take a little look at GI Blues and some of the other things. I think I probably will talk a little bit about His Hand in Mine, because obviously that's very significant for 1960 as well. So that's going to be for next time. I really hope you're able to join me then. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have enjoyed it, If you could do me a favour and click on the like, that'd be brilliant. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. I'd really appreciate it. So, next time, let's have a little look at GI Blues. But until then, have yourselves a great week. Take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.